Hey guys, how's quarantine life going? Going good? Just want to check up on you guys, make sure you're living life to the fullest, which is going basically to your living room, which is fine. That happens. Some of us do that just because we like doing that. So, welcome to Journey Youth. We're going to get started. Just to kind of refresh you guys a little bit, last week we talked about the beginning of Acts and how Jesus had just left. Now we're left with the disciples who are feeling kind of lost and wandering around a little bit. And Jesus says, just wait for my promise. I promise to give you the Holy Spirit. You just need to wait here for that promise. But here's the thing, they were scared because everybody who was in charge at that point had just decided to kill Jesus. So now they're looking at it going, well, we're next. We've got to be next, right? So they're scared, they're hunkered down, they're not too dissimilar from what we're going through right now. They're kind of staying in their homes, being very careful about who they gather together with. And there's this festival coming up. There's this party. Now, the nation of Israel loves to party. They have all these festivals throughout the year. And one of the bigger ones is the Feast of Pentecost, or the Pentecost Festival. And it's 5 days, and it's in the middle of summer, or the beginning of summer, I think. And they had decided that they were going to gather together and pray because they didn't know what else to do. They're like, we're trying to do stuff, but we can't really talk about being followers of Jesus. And they're scared and they're discouraged. I don't know if you've ever been scared of anything. When I was a kid, I was not scared of the dark, but I was scared of what might be in the dark. I was always scared when there was like darkness around. I couldn't sleep in silence. I don't know how people do that. They sleep in complete silence, complete darkness. They have to have everything kind of shut down around them. I can't do that because then I start making up noises and I swear I saw something because everything's just too dark. So I've had to be one of those people who has lights on and has music playing, and it used to drive Destiny nuts, but she's learned to deal with it. It's better than my snoring. But we've all had these fears in our life. And the really cool part about this is that these guys say, well, we're going to gather together because we're all kind of going through the same thing. And they get together and they begin to pray. They begin to pray, and then this supernatural thing happens. And we're reading out of Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, but I'm going to start in verse 2. It says, suddenly there was a sound from heaven like the roaring of a mighty windstorm, and it filled the house where they were sitting. Wind is a crazy thing. It really is. We experience it here, especially during Fair Week, which nobody told the wind we weren't having the fair. The wind still showed up. But you can't actually see wind. Do you ever realize that? You can see the effects of wind. You can see a bag blowing through the air or leaves blowing along the sidewalk. Like, you can see the effects of it, but you can't actually see wind. It's powerful, but it's invisible. You can't see it. And so you might say, oh, well, if you get a big gush, then you can see like a cloud or something, but it's still a cloud. It's not wind. You can't see wind. The Holy Spirit is often referred to as a type of wind. In the beginning, if you go all the way back to Genesis 1, it talks about the Holy Spirit hovering over the chaos and the deep, over the darkness. And he's there ready to do whatever God says to. He's the active force. He goes and he creates as God says. When God says create, he creates things. And so you always have this idea that the Holy Spirit is like a wind. These people, the Jewish people, would have realized that. And so when they heard the wind, they would have anticipated something happening, something great, something exciting. But then the next verse is really crazy. It says, then what looked like flames or tongues of fire appeared and settled on each of them. And everyone present was filled with the Holy Spirit and began speaking in other languages as the Holy Spirit gave them this ability. Now, the fire is a really interesting part of this whole thing. If you go back to the Old Testament, you'll remember this guy named Moses. And Moses, what he would do is he led the people out of Egypt, led them out of captivity, and took them into the desert. Now, he was taking them to the promised land, but because they were whining and crying and God got a little fed up with their complaining all the time. He was like, that's it, I'm done. 40 years, I'm going to wipe you all out except a couple guys, and then I'm going to let everybody else into the promised land. But Moses was given specific instructions by God on Mount Sinai. Now, when Moses first encounters God, God's a burning bush. When he meets him on Mount Sinai, he's like a flame of fire. His glory is like a fire. When he's leading Israel through the desert, it's a pillar of smoke by day and a pillar of fire by night. But then Moses is given these instructions to build this thing called a tabernacle, which will be where God's presence rests. God kind of gets down on earth with the people, and this will be his house, so to speak. And the tabernacle is given all these specific instructions, and people are blessed with gifts to be able to create it. But here's the crazy thing. The way you knew God was there was a pillar of fire above the tabernacle. So why is this significant? In this moment, God is using two very distinct symbols to show us that the Spirit of God is there. He's showing us the wind that's blowing through the place to say, I'm here. But then he does the fire. Why? Because he's showing that we are each now a tabernacle. We are now a resting place, the holy place, the holy place of God. The Spirit of God now resides within us, and that flame is a symbol of that. I always thought it was weird that like tons of fire, didn't their hair catch on fire or something like that? But really it's about showing that God's presence was now with them. So how does that help us today? Guys, we're all scared of something. And I'm not just talking about the COVID disease or anything like that. We're all scared of loss, of loneliness. We're all scared of something. There is something that's a fear inside of us. Maybe even it's a fear of people really getting close to us and understanding us and knowing us, and that they're just going to run away or they're going to hurt us. It could be a fear of somebody breaking into your house. It could be a fear of anything. But that fear causes this darkness to settle into your soul and this kind of outlook that everything's going wrong. And this is showing us that God's Spirit is there just like he was in Genesis. Just like in Genesis, where he's hovering over this chaotic darkness and hovering over the waters, and he's ready to reveal God's work and plan to the universe. That's what the Holy Spirit is doing inside of us in those moments. The Holy Spirit is there waiting, saying, I'm going to reveal God's work through this. And it's going to look like he's creating something out of nothing. It's going to look like he's creating boldness out of something that should have been fear. He's creating excitement out of something that was just numb. He's creating. The Holy Spirit is creating to reveal God, not just to you, but so you can reveal God to the world. Guys, we've talked about this a lot. God chose to reveal himself through us to other people. Our job isn't just to sit around and say, oh, good, I'm a Christian, I'm here. But he gave us his Holy Spirit so that we would know that he can create something out of what seems like nothing. He can create a positive out of a negative. He can change the very core of who we are for his glory and for his purposes. And it's because he knows that it's the best thing for us. He knows why we were created. He knows our purpose. And he's given us such a great big purpose in life, such a great big plan, that we can't do it on our own. We need him to intervene. We need him to do it, to fulfill the call of God on our lives. Guys, he gave us the Holy Spirit. And I hope you can understand how powerful this is. God didn't just give us the Holy Spirit to just sit around. If you keep reading, he gave his people these other languages to speak. And they went out and they started proclaiming God's glory to people that they didn't know the language of. There was no way they could have known these people's language. In fact, it was so crazy that people thought they were drunk. Like, oh, these guys are just drunk. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning. They weren't drunk. The Holy Spirit had come upon them and given them the ability to do the impossible, to reach people God wanted to reach. What impossible thing does he want to do through you today that you can't do on your own? You can't. I can't. Nothing I do can I do on my own. But it's the Holy Spirit living inside of me. It's this gift of the Holy Spirit living inside of me. So I want to challenge you guys tonight. Step out. Do something crazy for God. Don't just do something weird and crazy like rob a bank or something, but do something crazy for God. Call somebody you haven't talked to in a while. Encourage somebody that you know is scared right now about something. And in the midst of fear, stand up and allow the Holy Spirit to show you what real boldness is. Guys, I love you. I think you're great. I'm glad I'm starting to see some of your faces, and hopefully soon we'll be able to get together again. Love you guys.